Welcome to the final episode of the shortest Devlog series of all time, featuring Palette, Cards and Chaos, my deck-building bullet hell paintbrush game. Since the first episode, I've been hard at work for slightly worrying lengths of time, and have completed most of the core game mechanics. All that's left is polishing, adding a lot more content, and writing the lore, which wouldn't really be all that exciting to talk about without spoiling the game. So this is the last devlog, and you won't be hearing from me much until the game's planned launch about 4 months from now. Well, what happened was I wanted to really just focus on making the game without having to worry about YouTube content, but I got a bit too into it and now everything's done and it's just a 2-episode series. On the bright side, this might be a world record. There's also a demo out on Steam, check it out and give it a wishlist if it tickles your fancy. The gameplay loop is functional now and is getting pretty close to what I had in mind when I started this thing. Like last time, the player's attacks are still defined by cards. All 3 categories of cards, raw attacks, modifiers, and replay cards, work properly and have a bit of variety. This variety lets you build some fun attacks. I like melee dash builds because they're just really satisfying, but you can also put together some pretty cool range combos. You also don't need to choose one or the other because there are 2 hands now, one for left click and one for right click. You can only actually use one attack at a time, but this gives you a ton of flexibility for choosing what to use and when. You can run all sorts of combos, from a ranged hand and a melee hand, to double ranged or double melee, to attacks that mix the 2. The card system just lets you do a ton of cool things, which I'm really happy with. I've also refined the idea thematically behind the cards a bit more, and updated the visuals to reflect that. As you can see, the player wields a paintbrush, which performs actions and attacks based on the cards you hold. And so it only makes sense that the attack cards represent brushstrokes, while modifier cards represent paint. Each modifier card gives a buff to your current attack and represents a single color of paint. When it gets played, your brush gets metaphorically dipped in the color. The more of a modifier you have, the deeper the color. And when you play modifiers of different colors together, they'll mix and the result will be an in-between. The way I implemented this might be interesting, so I'll talk about it. The dirty secret behind my game is that all the paint textures in the game are actually white. To make them colorful, I simply modulate them to tint them into whatever color I want. And Godot stores these colors in a traditional RGB format. 3 values for the amounts of red, green, and blue that make up the color. Now I didn't actually test this, but I'm pretty sure trying to mix colors by working with these 3 values is probably pretty hard and likely to result in random gross colors like what happens when you mix paint randomly in real life. So what I'm doing instead is storing the card colors in a different format, HSV or hue saturation value. The most important part is the hue, the actual color on the color wheel. Since this is just a single value that wraps around in a circle, simulating a sort of tug-of-war between the different modifier cards that get played is pretty easy. Additionally, the saturation, or the amount of color in the color, starts out at 0, which is white, and gradually increases with each modifier card played. Finally, I convert the resulting color into RGB format, and feed it to Godot. And that's color mixing. Then there's the last category of cards, the replay cards, or replay cards singular. To be honest, I don't really know what they are thematically yet. They just replay other cards, so you can sort of duplicate whatever card you want for more flexible building. As you can probably tell, a lot of the design in this game was driven by gameplay first, and the thematic stuff is being forcibly worked in later. Also very notably, you can actually choose what cards you're using now. There's an inventory that pops up when you press E, where you can drag your cards around. Don't ask me how I made this because I'm not really sure myself at this point. I've lost those memories from the constant banging of my head on my desk. But hey, at least it works. You can add cards to your hand, remove them, or reorder them. You only start the game with 2 basic attack cards, but you'll pick up more as you progress through the game Rogue was created in the 1980s featuring an ASCII character exploring randomly generated ASCII rooms. It has since spawned a genre of what are called roguelikes, the key characteristics of which include randomly generated rooms and permadeath. Since Palette is a sort of deck builder, I think it works uniquely well to keep the game interesting. It forces players to have to experiment with different builds because you don't always get the same cards, and it also gives you slightly different levels to use them in every time. It's basically free replayability, and I think it wouldn't feel the same with static levels. And I managed to get it working now. What I've done is essentially created a few template rooms. These are just empty rooms with some markers for enemy spawn points and whatnot, and also some template hallways. Then through a surprisingly simple algorithm, rooms are randomly selected and joined. It essentially just walks in random directions for a set amount of steps while laying out rooms. But I excluded south to prevent deadlock scenarios where you loop in on yourself like a game of Snake. This also has the added benefit of letting the player know what direction they should be going, upwards, while still providing interesting branching paths to take. More on that later. Connecting the rooms was kind of finicky, but nothing too crazy. Each room starts out with a door in every direction, meaning any room can connect to any other room in any orientation. To do the actual connecting, a hallway is just spawned in and positioned in the right place, while the non-connected doors are filled in. Oh, and here's a minimap. It can turn into a big map. Like many other roguelike top-down shooters, the rooms lock the second you step inside. This triggers the spawning of a couple waves of enemies, and when they're all dead, it opens up again. What this means is that if you want to pass through a room, you need to clear it. But to beat a level, you don't need to clear every room. Since this is a sort of deck builder, I took some inspiration from some of my favorites of this genre, Inscription and Slay the Spire. These two games are turn-based card battler things where you have to advance through a bunch of battles to win. However, the battles you take are not quite random. Before you fight anything, you're occasionally offered a choice, branching paths to take on the map. This leads to trade-offs. Some paths may be riskier but will give you more loot, while others are safer and can be taken if you feel like you're not strong enough to get through the others. The procedural generation of palette tries to incorporate this decision making. The levels are these branching trees, and you can choose to ignore taking some paths if you want to play it safe, or risk dying in order to get more loot. And these decisions are pretty important, because if you're underprepared, the fights can quickly get difficult. I've added a small variety of enemies now. These spawn in waves, but an interesting mechanic is that the next wave doesn't wait for you to clear the one before it. They each have a timer, and if you don't clear the wave fast enough, the next wave spawns anyways, and you quickly get overrun and there's fire everywhere and it's a nightmare. As you progress, this just gets harder as enemies scale and get beefier. This puts a lot of emphasis on being able to do as much damage as possible, which means you need to build a deck with strong modifiers. It also just forces you to go in and beat things up, no stalling allowed. It's sort of like having to meet the target score in Balatro, but a tad more frantic. Who doesn't like boss fights? Me, I don't like them, because they take a damn lot of time to make. At the end of every few levels is a boss. They have elaborate movesets and make you dodge a lot of things. For this one, I decided to make him super huge and sort of integrated into the room, because I thought they would look cool. There is nothing super interesting going on under the hood to talk about, but it's pretty fun. Those of you with a keen eye will also notice that the game looks a little bit different compared to the last video. We've replaced all the old placeholder textures and added a ton of new ones. These were all pretty much done by my girlfriend, and to be honest, she's kind of hard carrying this game right now because they look pretty damn good. It's also got some graphical effects and post-processing to make it look just a little bit fancier. And importantly, I've also zoomed the camera out a bit because the original zoom was feeling a bit claustrophobic. That's the general rundown of what I've been up to. If you're interested in playing an early demo of the game for yourself, there's a link below. Keep in mind that this is still basically a prototype and the result of the first third of development time, so it's pretty rough. But please do let me know what you think. And if you like it, feel free to wishlist it. Anyways, I'll be spending the next few months hammering away at this thing and trying to turn it into something worth playing. So if you like this devlog, don't subscribe. This is the last one. Thanks for watching and see you later.